Okay, right. Well, today we're going to be talking about probably the most interesting, complicated topic there is right now, which is should you move to the UK? And Aliya's going to be joining us and taking us through her perspective as well. And there's a lot of complicated things related to this topic. We're going to cover them actually in a series. So we're going to do 4, 5, 6 different episodes on this topic because if you're thinking about moving to the UK, you're going to need to research a lot of things. And so we're going to cover them step by step. Today, we're going to start with not the basics, but some of the fundamentals, I guess, right? Is that the right way to to describe what we're going to do?
Yeah.
And I think we thought probably the best way to kick it off is, Aliya, honestly speaking, the number one reason people don't move is because they're afraid they can't do it or they're afraid it won't work out. Um, do you want to do you want to talk a little bit about this because I think fear is like it's the number one thing which stops people from doing what they want in life. And
Yes, yes, 100%.
you've moved to a number
Yeah.
of different countries.
I faced a lot of clients, like, for example, even when they come for EP for 15 minutes calls, for 30 minutes calls, the first mostly question they ask is like, should I even do it? Like, is my CV looks good? And people do have a great experience. They have like 10 years of experience in consulting in Big Four, for example. I mean, it's well-known companies around the world. So there's nothing kind of should stop them from thinking that they're doing great. And like mostly people say like, oh, I've been promoted several times. Like I started as a, I don't know, associate, and then I am senior right now. And but still people think that it's not enough. Like, and the language can be great. I mean, it doesn't matter from which country you're coming. Like, it can be Indonesia or it can be China. But like, like if your English is great, it's like it's a halfway, I would say. And plus, this fear of people like, am I good enough? Like, should I even do it? Like, should I send my CVs? And like, well, did you try it already? Did you get any feedbacks, any interviews? Because like you need to know, like you need to feel it, like how it will be going. Obviously, sometimes clients comes and like they need to work on their CV and like on their profiling and everything. That's what we step in and help them. But like usually people just feel like I should not do it, like I'm not good enough, like I just, maybe it's not the right time. Like I just recently actually had a call with a client, and she's like, should I go to UK or should I go to Middle East? And I'm like, well, what you prefer, like what's in your mind? Like, what do you want to do? And she's like, I don't know, maybe I'm not good enough for UK, or maybe I'm not good enough for Middle East. But there's no such a thing. Like, right, like especially with the CV as good as hers, that she needs to think like which country will be, like it has to come from you personally, like
Yeah.
it has to be like, I want to go to UK and I'm going to get there, and like I just need to, fill up the gaps, like improve my profile, like work on my CV on my LinkedIn or something else, like interview, and then you can go straight away and try. Like until you will not try, you will never know.
Actually, that's a great point because a lot of people when they come to us, they ask me the question, what are my chances, right? And the honest answer is that there's no answer to that question. Your chances depend on how much effort you put in. Are you willing to rebrand yourself for this market? Are you willing to research what the companies want? Are you willing to make that your life for the next few months to a year and make it like your priority? If the answer is yes, your chances are extremely strong. And actually I would say that I can almost barely remember a situation where someone didn't succeed that wanted to succeed. um, but what's also interesting is like the people that have this fear are often incredibly talented. So like they're often at the top of their game, like they're a senior director or a partner, or but they've only like kind of they only know the local market, or they've only had maybe limited experience to Europe or the UK. And actually, what I find is that because they're so good at managing kind of factors and different things in their job. They've got like 12 different things in their mind. At every moment, every day, they're managing all these different bits. So they're so overwhelmed. They think to move must be as complicated as the work I do.
Yes, yes, exactly. That's actually a very good point. I just spoke with a client about that, and she's like, I led the team, like in a new country. I opened a new office because they didn't have like enough experience in that, and like I led like a few departments. Even she was like from a different department, like for the consultancy company, and and the thing is, I was like, well, if you being able to move to another country, yes, it's not English speaking country, but like you being open, you open the new project there, you establish everything, you basically hired people, and checked everything. Don't you think like you will be able to move somewhere abroad? That's not a, like a rocket science. And I mean, there are still people who does rocket science, and they do it, so everyone is capable of doing things. So I think, like, yes, people should believe more in themselves and just do a little bit research, like it's like with the, I think, younger kids, when they have to go to school and they're like scared that the teachers will ask them something. But like, did you read the book? If you read the book, you know what to talk about. So that's here's your answer. And as well, like, I see a lot of imposter syndrome from especially, USSR countries. People have that. I mean, not just yours, I mean, like Asia as well, like, because like sometimes it's not a very cultural thing to come to and show yourself, to sell yourself. Like when you tell people you need to sell yourself, like they're like, oh, I don't think it's appropriate, like I don't think I should talk about that, how amazing I am, like how many achievements I have, like I can speak, I don't know, 5 different languages, because like it's not a cultural thing. So just forget about that. Like you always need to think, what is your goal? Your goal is to find a job. Your goal is to go and follow your dreams. So it's the same. Like if you want, I don't know, a burger at the evening, you don't think that you need to go dress up and go out and buy it. Something like that.
Yeah, and I mean, you said imposter syndrome, and do you know that we've worked literally with CEOs from major companies, neurosurgeons, even literally NASA people from NASA, and I can honestly tell, and like politicians, and we worked with literally anyone you can imagine that you've seen in the public eye. We potentially at some point worked with someone like that, and I promise you that everyone has imposter syndrome. Everyone thinks that they kind of just maybe they fell into the role a bit by accident. To some extent, there's a logic to that thinking, because they might remember that, like, oh, well, actually, I got recommended for this role. I didn't apply for this role. And so that they can sort of work themselves into a corner in terms of like, I could never now leave, because if I leave, I'll never get back to the same position. The reality is that in the top 5 or 10%, this is what I think, right? The top 5-10% of candidates, let's say 5%, they're all the same, really.
Yeah.
Like there might be like, if you look, for example, at chess or tennis, there's 1 or 2 people who are literally better than everyone else. But generally, the top 500 players in the world, they're pretty similar, right? There's always 1 or 2 who kind of like literally the best in the world, right? Like Federer or whatever. But then the rest are kind of similar. What changes their position in the ranking is their dedication and effort and putting the time in. Also being willing to understand themselves. And actually being willing to understand yourself, it's the most important thing. So most of the work I do is, especially when we get more senior professionals who are thinking like, okay, I'm in wherever they are, I want to move to the UK or anywhere, but really, especially the UK, but I don't know anything about the market and everything else. And they convince themselves that that gap can never be crossed. But the reality is, if you put the work in to understand yourself, but to also analyze the market, to look at what's happening, it's a question of activity. The same way that there's like, right now, a lot of kids who are say 12, 13, 14, 15 who like playing football. In the next 5 years, 2-3% of them will become professional players, and the rest won't.
Yeah.
Do they really have a difference in ability? No. It's about structure and approach. And I think if I can give a message to everyone, it's that if you get the structure right, it works. Like everything in life, if you plan early and prepare, it works. If you don't plan and you don't do it properly, it doesn't work. And that's the reality. It doesn't work. But fear is often only in your mind. And once you're past it, the rest is easy. Like the actual activity, yeah, it's hard work, but it's not, you don't sit there questioning your kind of life every day.
Yes, I totally agree.
So having talked about sort of the psychology of getting into the right position, I thought I'd also just briefly explain one of the reasons we want to record this and to talk about this topic is you can go online and you can see a million different opinions about you should do this or you should do that, or why it's the right time or why it's not the right time. In my opinion, they always come from a particular perspective. It's always about, well, if you work in this industry, then maybe you should do this. And I think people are overwhelmed with this kind of amount of information out there. And because we work literally with hundreds of people, and our main market is the UK, and we help people move to the UK, and that's exactly what we do. I think the perspective we're able to give on this is one where people will be able to trust that our judgment and our advice and guidance on this is based on what is real today. Like the market today is like this. These are the clients moving last week with us or next week, or this is happening now. Everything we're going to talk about, it's not all amazing positive news, right? We are not in a moment of massive investment and growth in the country, but there's also a lot of negativity in the news, which I think a lot of people take on and they think, I've seen a negative article about the UK. What about Middle East? You know,
Mm-hmm.
reality, like everything in life, is it's a mix, right? There's good news and there's bad news, and you need to understand. For me, for my industry, for my role, what does that mean for me? Where is the best place to move? In general, if you make it your mission to move to anywhere and you just stick at it, unless Trump, for example, adds like $100,000 visa fee, the market will still have opportunity. That type of action does kill the market, but apart from that, things don't change as much as the news makes it out to be. So that's why we're doing these podcasts, to really kind of to share the reality, like what it takes, but also what's available. Maybe Aliya, you could start off some of that detail. Would you mind walk us through a little bit, like what's happening with the job market right now? So, in terms of unemployment and opportunities, like, do you want to walk through the key points in terms of like today, February 2026, February, March? Where are we right now?
Well, that's a very good question. Well, for UK, it's a tough time, I would say. I think, especially with all the salary threshold changes, rules changes, just visa changes. It's harder for immigrants. That's 100%. But even for people who lives in UK who are citizens, it's tough. Like economy is not doing well right now in UK, as we've seen like last news, for example, that the younger generation, like younger graduates, are struggling to get a jobs, because like a junior jobs are not very high. Like companies are not hiring right now juniors. They're trying to cut costs. They're trying to um, like make sure that their risks are count.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and everyone's just trying to save the money. And but in the same time, there's so many companies are opening, and like there's a startups, there's people are trying to like to make a life and to earn money. And like for example, with our last story with Eka and Aya, for example, she being able to find a job as a she's a, I think, 3-4 years experienced manager, and she's being able to secure visa, she's being able to stay in UK. And it shows that even if the things are bad in UK or in the world, let's say, that there is still people are looking for workers. They need people, and it's not just about your skills. Like you can be incredible and smart, and like your CV will look amazing, but then what are your soft skills? Like can you actually have a great conversation with your interviewer? Like can you show yourself from the better side of yourself? And this one, for example, in Aya case, the company liked her. They saw her skills and experience and capabilities, and they even didn't have a license, so they got a license. They sponsorship her. So it says there's always like a moment for you to try to find. It's tough, it's hard to find, but like there is still uh this kind of moment happen. And I think it's always happened, like like as you said, like there's always something happen in the world. And like if I will say, like when, like for example, I talk with my mom, and she will say like, well, it's so hard right now to move somewhere or like find a job or something like that. Like when she was young, she was able to find a job like straight away or something like that, and like no 10 interviews going through. And it's just, but in the same time, people still be moving to United States, for example, or to UK, like living, like I don't know, like I'm from Kazakhstan, so like living in Kazakhstan, everyone's like, oh my god, it's impossible to go to America. This is just a crazy thing. Like I even cannot imagine that. but people still been doing it. And like I met like older people who was already retired, and they're like, oh yeah, I moved when I was 20, and like it was hard, but like I still did it. So it's always something happening. The economical crisis,
Yeah.
financial crisis, wars and stuff. So you just need to make sure, like, are you ready for that? And like, are you ready like mentally? And that's what the main point you need to think about.
Yeah, actually, the point about the world carries on. I tell this to all of our clients. So the number one question is, the people ask me, I've seen this bad news. What's happening in the market? Is the market dead? Is my industry in terminal decline? And even when COVID came in, obviously the UK is generally a service-based economy, so we are not like an industrial nation anymore as we used to be. So the work we do to a great extent is an intellectual exercise or intellectual capital based economy. And so even when COVID came in for the UK, yes, our economy dropped because everything shut down, but not by as much as like people think, like a certain percentage, but like I think it was like between 5 and 10%. It was a drop, but it wasn't like this. I thought, maybe intuitively you would think the whole country shuts down, we're going to drop 20%, 30%. It wasn't the case. Now, in a tough market, a tough economy, there's a lot of fear in the market. And actually, if you look at a lot of US indices that track fear and greed in the stock market, they're mainly pointing towards fear. And it's a good general analogy for like where the world is, right? If American stock market is fearful, generally the world is fearful because so much runs through America. What does that mean? That means the reality is companies will also be afraid to invest in new projects and new people and new factories and new locations. This is a reality, and it happens. But the world still goes round. Everyone still needs their eggs and tomatoes. Everyone still needs their insurance, their car. Everything still needs to work. And even if you're in an industry like fintech, which is naturally kind of like let's say, would do well in a more positive environment, but still, it's a fundamental service, right? They're still going to be hiring and firing, and people are leaving and coming and going. So I would say, like, at any particular point in my experience, whenever I see negative or positive news, I add or minus 10% in my head, and that's it. It's never the case that something is dropped by 80% or 90%. There are exceptions to this, like developers of software engineering that are massively, genuinely impacted by AI. Yes, jobs are way down, but that doesn't mean that the skill sets you built can't be adapted for another role. And you also have to think of it, how I think of it, a little bit like this. Yes, you right now don't have a role, or you're trying to change role, or whatever the situation is. In your mind, you're on your path, you're on this like one road. You only see your road. And you look back and you look forward, you don't maybe see exactly the right way to go. Maybe you look back and it's foggy and you don't understand why you made certain. Okay, fine. But if you keep going, at the end of the road, there is a result. But most people don't keep going. So by taking confidence that at the end of the path, there is something for you, you will not end up in the percentage of people complaining about the economy. And if you are in that percentage, you just need to change your approach. If you feel like the economy gives you nothing, no opportunity, there's nothing for you there, your approach is wrong. And I think that's, if you go online, all you'll hear about, like, have you ever noticed this? If you ever have a good experience, you never go online and leave a positive review, generally speaking, unless it's like outstanding. If you have a negative experience, you're the first one to share it. So if you go to Reddit and YouTube and wherever else, most of the comments about everything will be negative, because negativity sells. So most people will go online and feel like, oh my God, everything's terrible. And they will also make them feel like, well, if English people and British people themselves are so negative about everything, the economy must be completely dead and flatlining. As always, is not the case. Like I said, the world has to continue. You just need to find the right place to start. One of the there's a couple of things I think we could talk about which are related to this, in terms of, like, many people come to the UK on a spouse visa.
Mm-hmm.
And they come on a spouse visa and they say, well, my partner is working and I'm on a spouse visa, so I need to be a spouse and I need to stay in the house, man or woman, right? And we've had many clients from both sides. So this is really not always a man and it's always the woman that we're helping. We've had completely both sides many times. Do you want to explain actually what is possible on a spouse visa? Because some people have never even thought about this idea that they could work even with a spouse visa.
Yeah, like with a spouse visa, they definitely can work. I mean, this is, I think it's a best visa you can come with. Like, and because you already have a person who is taking care kind of a budget, they're already working, everything is fine, and now it's a time for you to figure out what you want to do. A lot of clients who comes to us, they kind of came with a spouse and they didn't think much, like to moving somewhere or like finding a job, but then they realize, like they have to do something, and they don't know like what else, and what else they should do. But then they realize, well, I'm on a spouse visa, like I actually can work, I can earn money as well. Like maybe, like if something happens, like if your spouse will lose your his job things, hopefully not, but like they can like back up them, like probably maybe they will have a great career on their side, and like they will be able to secure a sponsorship if it's needed. So this visa allows you to do everything like as a normal citizen. Oh, I think you cannot vault, but I don't think it's a big issue. So, and yeah, like you just can go straight away. Like everything is equal for you as for your spouse who is on work visa, and you can start your journey by yourself. You just need to figure out what you want to do, and a lot of people actually don't know. I mean, half of the clients, they usually do not speak well of the language, or maybe they haven't been working for a while and they just like a little bit out of the industry. But that's everything is how to say fixable. Like you can go
Yeah.
and study some extra certification. For example, if you're in law, you can go and like study, or like if you're in an accountancy or finance, like there's so many certifications, like which is equivalent for companies who is looking for like ACCA or like CIA and all this kind of certification. If you for example, sometimes people study and then like they can decide that they now want to go to work, so they they just straight away doing it. You just need to build a strategy. You need to figure out what you want. You need to build your CV. And that's actually a good thing to have a spouse visa, because your spouse actually can help you to figure out what's going on in the market, because they're already there, like they're already working
Yeah.
with the culture, with the like British culture, let's say that. He can give you tricks and tips on that. And I think it's great. So I think a lot of people should use it.
Yeah, I think what I would say, what I would add to that is obviously when you're on a spouse visa, sometimes it feels quite isolating. And I think because you feel like maybe if you've moved recently and your spouse is working and you're not working, you feel a bit like you don't have maybe so many friends, a community, and you don't really have a path to like, how do I get a job if I can't even really understand where to do my CV or build my LinkedIn or whatever it is. And actually, I would say that, especially with, I mean, we have a ton of videos and everything else, but a lot of stuff, there's a lot of resources out there. You just need to be open that to the idea that you know nothing, and then
Yes.
go forward and figure it out step by step. Actually, we will soon launch our, forgot about it, but we soon launch our platform where people can actually do that, right, for free. And to a great extent, a lot of stuff will be able for free to build up their profile. And then the rest of it is about thinking about, well, what will you need to adapt for the UK market, right? For example, don't put your photo on your CV like you do in many other countries. What's the UK culture like, and how do people behave compared to other places? One thing that sometimes people face, especially when they come on a spouse visa, is that they don't have maybe a continuous career history. Sometimes there's actually quite often the case that they follow the spouse around from one country to another. They end up in the UK and they have like the last 3 years they haven't worked.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to explore this topic? Because a lot of people really panic about this, and they have a good reason to panic, because naturally the question is, what the hell have you been doing for 3 years? But it's not something to panic about if you have the right approach. Do you want to go into?
Yes, sure. Like for example, I have a client, and she hasn't been working for I think 3 years. She was following actually her husband around the world, because he's working I think in the oil and gas industry, and and she is a ex consultant from a big four. So I think it's a good example of showing that like she's been on maternity leave, they had a baby, and then they've been traveling, moving around, and she's just been taking care of the house and husband and just like kids and everything. And now she came to the point when she thinks like it's a time to me to go back to work, to start my to continue my career. What should I do? And a lot of people like having this again fear, or maybe not a clear clarity of what to do next. And this is not a big issue. Like you always can, as I said, like you always can input in your CV that you've been, like, even if you will say that you've been taking care of your family, you've been relocating or something like that, this is understandable. Like we all people. And I think when a hiring manager will see that you actually have a life, and like you being maybe missing, yes, from the industry, but you're still a smart person, you can continue the conversation, you prepared for the interview, you know what you're doing, you're still an expert. So that should be not an issue. You always can put that you maybe had your personal projects, or you've been in a I don't know,
Yeah.
like self-employed or something like that, helping out a family. Or like we actually had a clients where they kind of, oh, I haven't been working for a year, but I was helping out my family with finances, for example, or like just like a freelance job or something like that, or they
Mhm.
studied a certification. So it is still like you always just need to show that you are proactive and you are not just being lying down on a couch and doing nothing. Let's say that. And
Even if that is true, try not
yes.
to let
So
them know about
and
it.
um,
I
yeah.
wanted to add something to that, which is a lot of people feel like they have to apologize for career breaks. I felt it. I felt when I left my job that I wouldn't know if I was going to come back at some point to the office, whatever it was, which I didn't. But if I did, I was thinking like, well, how will I explain it? Because I left for, let's call it, personal motivation reasons. Right? Personal and motivation. I wasn't sure what I wanted. I knew that this was not what I didn't want, and I left. And I was like, gave myself permission to figure it out. I think sometimes when people talk about the break, they kind of come in almost apologizing. Like,
Mhm.
I know I've had this break, and but it was only because of this. It was only, instead of just saying, for a short period of time, 1 or 2 years, I had to put my family first. Right? This was the reality of the situation. Thankfully, now that's not the case, and I'm excited to get back into work. Actually, a very important point in general. Like when people come to an interview, the way you started off is the way it will go, right? So if you come into an interview and you say, "Oh, thank you so much for agreeing to see me today," and so you're setting it up that you're there, kind of begging for something, and I'm here to have a job. If you go into an interview and you say, "I'm really excited to be here. I really want to find out today if we're a strong fit for each other because the role seems really exciting and I think my skill sets match really well. Obviously, I'm figuring out the next step in my career,
Mhm.
and I think this could be a really strong option. But obviously, we need to discuss it."
Yes.
You're framing it in a totally different way. The same with the career break. You're just coming in with the right energy. Then people, they take your frame. You give them that perspective, that frame, they take it. Oh, she's confident. She knows what she wants. She had to take a break for a completely normal, obvious reason. Absolutely not a problem. And the reason it works is that you're implicitly kind of telling the person in front of you, I did this for the right reasons. Not, I can't manage my stress and I had to leave my job, which is scary for employers because they're like, well,
Yes.
you're going to do the same thing here. So
Yeah.
what we're doing is we're kind of not faking, but we're teaching you to kind of really present yourself in the best way.
Yes,
Um,
and actually, a lot of people, well, I don't want to say struggling that, but they like kind of don't feel comfortable. Like they want to be honest, but like again, honesty. You need to understand in your head, like what is honesty for you. Like you don't have to apologize for this stuff. And I really like how you said, like you need to put your energy and your confidence when you talk about something with confidence. So it's people will get it, like, and they will kind of respect you for like you delivering it with honesty, but also with the confidence, and you know what you've been doing. This is very important.
yeah, and actually, since you bring that up so specifically, and since you have experience of the UK and the US, I would like to point out for people thinking about the UK, British people, American people, very different, right? There are a lot of similarities, but they're very different. In America, you can be very direct about this stuff. In the UK, you can be direct, but British people are the most indirect people in the world. So you can be confident about it, but you have to be careful not to cross the line into I do what I want and you're going to have to be okay with it. In the UK, that doesn't work. What works is I made it for the right reasons. but now I'm willing to go back into the kind of mentality of adapting and figuring out what I want, what you guys want as from me
Mhm.
as a resource. There's a very important kind of point which we will talk about in depth, right? UK culture and British people and everything else. But also, most people think about when they say, "Do you want to move to the UK?" They think about London for a good
Mhm.
reason. It's like half of our economy is only in London, literally. Every all the cool stuff is there. I mean, there's lots of other stuff, but most of the kind of investment into kind of attractions and restaurants and it's in London, right? This is for
Mhm.
sure. But that doesn't mean it's the only option. Uh, do you wanna explain a bit about this? Because there are actually quite a lot of other cities that offer people a lot, and I actually know maybe I don't know, dozens and dozens of people, especially who moved from CIS countries, who ended up kind of falling in love with Edinburgh or Liverpool or, for whatever reason, they found something there they love more. And there is more authenticity in those other cities as well.
Yes, yes, 100%. I mean, London is great. I love London, me personally, but other cities can be considered as well. I think Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds, Newcastle. So there's so many cities like where you can find yourself. I mean, even Oxfordshire, like Oxford, Cambridge. I mean, if you're a professor or like you're in an academic area, I think it's a great area for you to be there. So it's you always need to think about like who you are, where you want to be, what kind of style of life you want to have, because like London is great, but like not, for example, all the people wants to live in a big crazy busy city, like getting underground and everything. So like some people just wanted to live in Oxford, and it's like very nice cozy city. I mean, it's still big, like you can go to shop and find the restaurants, but and also with salary wise, for example, like some cities can provide the same salary, depends from again from the companies and industry you're targeting. But there is like a huge, for example, oil and gas companies which is not based in London, they're based maybe in Edinburgh or Aberdeen, and like they pay you well, but like the expenses of cost living is different, it's lower. So when you doing your calculation, it's very good to like analyze like how much I actually will put like money in the pocket after I will pay all my
Yeah.
bills or my rent costs and everything. So maybe London will be not the greatest city for you. And like I always tell people, like that you really need to understand like what you really want for yourself. And like I think a lot of people, especially with families, they do get that. Like I have clients who came to me and they're like, I love London, but now I have kids and family. I think it will be too expensive, and I need to find something more calm, cozier, like to
Yeah. Yeah.
live a family life. So I think people need to think about that as well. And like there's a great opportunities in different cities as well.
Yeah, I can add a personal story to this because my sister lives very close to Manchester, and her, like, the rent for the house is like 3 times less than London. So what you would get in London, you have it there. It's literally 3 times less. So it's a crazy difference in cost. At the end of the day, you're living somewhere, whether it's rent or mortgage, whatever, and at some point you finish living there, especially if you move initially and you're renting, and then and over those few years when you're working, you can build up savings or not, depending on
Mhm.
like where you're investing. I saw yesterday a really cool reel by a girl living in London. She said it's quite interesting point. She said, I figured out after 10 years of London that London is not for girls like me. And her argument is I think it's really important point because everyone assumes London is just this magical place. She said, if you come here from really far away and it's like a new place for you, and you're not somebody who you're more introverted than extroverted, and you don't have a career plan which has like significant salary growth like as an option. So for example, in consulting, yes, initially you don't earn very much, but as you progress up, the salary starts to rapidly increase. Or as a lawyer, or as a doctor, or whatever it is. There are fields where the option to scale your salary is there, and there are fields where that's not the case. And if you find yourself in London, living and working in London in a role, and you've never thought to yourself, how am I actually going to eventually, how is this salary going to go up? You will get stuck because you're doing the role. You can't afford to save because your cost of living is kind of equivalent with your salary, but there's no kind of direction. the reality of life, you still want to have fun, you still want to go out with friends, you still want to spend time. So you probably won't sit there and really plan and analyze your career for days and weeks and months. And before you know it, 5 years have passed and you've just done the same thing for 5 years and you haven't actually taken your career forward. So I think one important thing to state, London is expensive. So your career plan has to factor in that it also gets more expensive every year, right? So every year you're not taking your salary forward. And in both of the roles, well, it's not quite true that I didn't get any salary increases because I did, but I never, when I was in the office, the salary increase is always kind of okay, right? It's
Yeah,
only when you
like a
change from one
fixed
company to
percentage.
another that you actually get this big jump, which was the same for me. So when you jump from one company to another, you can do it. But that means you need to be good at finding new roles. And that's a skill that most people struggle with because they only do it sort of now and again. So maybe every 3, 4, 5 years there, and then it takes a lot of effort. And most people who are thinking about moving to London now, the reality of statistics, probably are in the same job they were in when AI kind of came out 2, 3 years ago. AI has completely changed the job market for well, the whole world's job market, but particularly the US and UK, because they're the highest demand. So now, whereas 2, 3 years ago, if you just kind of push enough and make enough applications, you could probably maybe eventually find yourself in an interview and maybe convince someone of your worth. Now, applications don't really mean as much as they used to. I mean, they've massively dropped in meaning. And so to actually make the move, you have to think of kind of adaptively about what you're doing. You have to network, you have to look at the market. And then once you've made the move, obviously you need to think about your career. So people who are thinking about moving, you need to think of it as moving is the first step. Getting a job and a visa is the first step. And then you need a really strong career plan over the next 5 years, how you're going to keep up with life. And it is fast paced and it is moving. Now, of course, with London, the cool thing about London, all the companies are here. So most of the investments in London or near London, and so on. But as my sister found, she'd rather earn a bit less, but actually she's online. So actually her earnings didn't really change that much, and live in a house that's 3 times cheaper. Because at the end of the month, they have so much more money and they can actually put it towards saving for a house. So I think the advantage of the UK is that you can spend a few years in Edinburgh or Aberdeen or wherever, which, by the way, are not cheap, but they are much cheaper than London, right? And you can put together some savings, and it's an important strategy to the point where that girl who made the reel, who said, London's not for me, she didn't come in with a strategy. She's being honest that it didn't work out for her. But if you came in with a strategy, okay, I can't afford London rent, here's my plan. Or I can't afford it, like it's going to be very tight for 2, 3 years, but here's my growth plan in my career. So if you come in with that plan, within 3, 4, 5 years, you will be in a much more comfortable position. Often people, when they come across, let's say if you have consulting experience in CIS countries, when you come across, you'll have to take a step down in seniority. This is the reality. You don't have experience of the local market, but you have the general skill set. You can't fight other people at your level who have 10 years experience in the UK, but you can fight one step down, and you'll be considered very easily for that because that's your chance to prove yourself that you can come back up to the other level. So it's like a game, right? It's like Monopoly. You have to look at the whole board first and don't worry just about the first roll. It's actually going round and round and figuring out these details. So speaking about costs, I thought it could be nice to break down the reality of like what does it really cost? Like what are the costs of living in London right now? But I think it's the question most people would want to know the answer to. Let me start by saying that when I moved to London I was born in London, but my first job was outside of London, then I came back, right? So I followed that path a little bit to some extent that I talked about. But I came back after 2, 3 years. I wanted to be in London irrespective. And at that time, 50,000, which is in 2012. So this is a while ago, but at that time, 50,000 was considered like a pretty reasonable salary in the sense that like you could really live on that type of salary. And the reason I mentioned 50,000 is that I would now say 50,000 is like the minimum you need to earn to feel even just okay.
Yeah.
Because the cost of life has more than doubled since that previous time. So now 50 is like what used to be 25. And 25 used to be like, okay, you can survive, but you're not going to be doing much.
That would be super tough.
And I also have stories. The reality of London, just to I'll do some specific costs as well in a second. I also want to just share a story
Mm.
about, and I've heard this from a few people, right? No matter where you go in terms of earnings, I've never met someone who's happy with what they earn. And that includes people who earn seven figures or more, right? People who earn seven figures, they have assets that they have to keep, keep up to date. Their children are all in private school. They have like seven different cars that they've got costs on. They have to go to all these different events and fly around the world. Despite the fact they earn the money, the lifestyle upgrades with them. And in London, that's particularly true. So all the people I know in investment banking and advanced legal positions and so on, they still struggle with the cost of living. Not because they don't have the money, but because you ask yourself, okay, I'm earning the money. What was the point of earning the money? To actually do something with it, right? For my kids to have a better education, or for us to go on a holiday now and again. So you will find a good reason, and there's a legitimate understanding there. Okay,
Yeah.
you work hard to live life, not just to put it in the bank and then for your grandkids to have it later on. So just keep in mind, that's what London can become for a lot of people. That doesn't mean if you're smart and you little bit think about what you're doing, you can't really save a lot of money and invest, and you can do that as well. But a lot of people get swept in the the wave of spending just keeps pushing them and pushing them. And the class system in the UK, we have middle class and upper class and everything else. It's this very like non-stop, this like image of the rat on the wheel. It just never gets off. There's always
Yeah.
this idea like you need to earn more. I need to have a better car. I need to have this. It's a feeling that exists in the UK that I don't think exists quite the same anywhere else. It's always that you need to do something better. It lives in the UK. It's like, oh, you need to earn a bit more. Oh, the neighbors have this car. Oh, this or this. And so
Well, America, I think, will be the same.
America,
Maybe too.
but America, the houses are like 5 times bigger, so you can actually enjoy your own house. Whereas here, the houses are small. So let's just talk about costs. So let's say you earn 55,000 a month, right? Right. You have to pay tax and everything else. At the end of the month, you'll have 3,500 in that area. To rent a simple flat is going to take at least half of your money, just the rent. And then you have to pay for bills on top. And now energy and water, everything became crazy expensive. So I would say you probably even you would lose even another 10% at least of your money in your pocket just to the bills. And the rent that I talked about is like an average place. It's average. It's not nice. You won't go home and be like, wow. Like, you'll be like, okay. Just for context, I referenced 3,500, which is about 1,700 a month. When I moved to London in 2012, my first apartment, which was really nice, was about 1,800 a month, 15 years ago. And I loved it, and it was worth it, and I could afford it. But that was 15 years ago. That was a nice apartment. Now, this is a very, very average apartment, and you probably pay double. You'd have to pay all your money to get a nice apartment, right? Obviously, you got to move around. That's another couple of £200, £300 a month for transport, bills like food as well, a few £100 a month, depending like what you spend on. So every month, you'll probably have £1,000 a month to decide, what do I do with this money?
Mm-hmm.
That's before you plan to go with your friends to the restaurant or go to the theater. Then when you book the theater, it's like £85 a ticket. So that's why I say now 50,000 is just enough to say, okay, I can survive, but this has to change kind of quickly. That doesn't mean, sadly, that there are like thousands of £50,000 jobs available. It's still not that easy to just jump into a salary like that. It's still a challenge. I'm interested, how does that compare to the US, just out of interest, because you have experience of both? How does that compare, for example, to New York or LA or?
Well, yes, it's well, if we will talk about like a difference in the salaries, there is a huge, I think, difference. I mean, especially for me, because me working in United States, the salaries can reach like, even for my profession also, like 100K and to 250K, which is, I mean, if you are like a director, let's say that. But like, I think UK is not the same. Like, if you are a director, like maximum maybe you can get like 150K. But like, if you work in a very prestigious company who's having a good profit, and like, they're doing okay, so they will be able to pay this salary to you. And like this is very interesting point, to be honest, like because when clients comes and like for example they live in United States but they want to move to UK, for example, and they always say like, well, I would like to at least to have like 100K salary. And I'm like, well, the 100K salary is like a director salary in UK. So maybe you need to kind of do your own research. Like you can go to Glassdoor, you can like Google it and like see what's the comparisons, because unfortunately the difference is huge. And sometimes when I see the salaries, I'm like, oh my god, this is not enough. Like it's not like I don't want this salary, I want more. And then I realize, well, I'm not checking United States. United States is different. And United States, even in states, our salaries are different, obviously. Like Los Angeles, San Jose, San Francisco, or New York are the most well-paid states and like cities. And like because there's like a business financial hubs, like IT hubs, like Silicon Valley, for example. And so the salaries are much much higher there. But there is also like a different cities, like I don't know, Oklahoma or South Carolina, where the salaries are not that high because there's nothing crazy going on, let's say that,
Yeah,
like not
yeah.
so many companies are based in there. So yeah, the difference is huge. I think like all the time when I talk with the clients, I say like you need to kind of, I don't know, like think like maybe 30% less. What are you expecting to?
Yeah, I think 30, even 40 or 50. And at the higher level, it can be really big. So in
Yeah.
the UK, I always tell people, sometimes people are surprised at this because, for example, in Moscow or Istanbul, they might be getting this, they might have a really senior position as a director or others, earning 500,000 a year. And they think, well, in London, I surely should be able to earn more. The reality is, unless you're on the like a genuine CEO, COO sort of level, you're unlikely to be earning more than 150 a year, right? That doesn't count doctors and lawyers and like specialist, very specific professions where you have to study for like 10 years. Is different. But in
Mhm.
general, project managers, marketing, senior marketing managers, PRs, comms, all the sort of roles that you would kind of say maybe just you will get with a degree, with a standard like university education, you're going to max out around 150, and you're actually going to find it hard to get to that, get to that level as well. So there is this level, there is this like limit to earnings, which is real, and there's a number of reasons for it. Number one is that it used to be like that many years ago when 150 was a crazy amount of money. Like when I graduated in 2008, 150 was like now probably what feels like 300 or 400. But what happened, because wages have not increased in this country for 20 years, nearly, almost pretty much since 2008 financial crisis, wages have not increased. They've actually, in real terms, have almost decreased, particularly with cost of living going up.
Mhm.
There are many reasons for that. I can spend 3 hours explaining why, but it doesn't matter so much, except that this is the reality. What does that mean for people moving? Bear in mind, as you progress, let's say you come on 60 and you're planning to go to 80, 90, 100 and whatever, and then eventually end up at 150, you'll only get there if you're literally the 1%, right? You have to be the 1%. You can't sort of be average or even greater than that. You have to be the 1%, and you have to really take charge of your career from the first moment. There's another bad news about the UK, which is that from 100 to 150,000, if you have kids, it actually means that whether you earn 100 or 150, you earn the same. Because as you earn more from 100 to 150, they take away some of your tax allowance. So
Mhm.
what it means is you literally in your account, you can earn 100 or 150, it's the same. In your account will be the same. And that's why I would say that although this has always been true, it's always been true like that for the last a long, long time. It hasn't changed a lot recently. But because America has made it their priority, for example, to invest in AI and make them like the beacon of AI in the world, they now have a very strong economy at a moment where we have now the opposite, right? We have literally the opposite of that. There's no investment here. People are not thinking about it. They're adopting it privately in businesses, but there isn't this kind of general push to grow and strengthen the economy. And the reality of that means salaries haven't increased. And the reality of that means because these levels haven't changed, but the cost of living went up so much, now, although 150 is still the limit, a lot of people are only asking for 100 because they're like, I'll have way less work earning 100 than 150, but I'll actually get the same money in my account at the end of the month. And by the way, when I say 100, I mean 99.999, because
Yeah.
if you earn 100, actually that's the limit, and you start to lose certain benefits. So it's a very important point, I think, for people to understand that there are a lot of benefits here that are not talked about maybe directly. We have incredibly beautiful nature. It's generally not that cold here. Yeah, maybe 1 month a year is quite cold. Yes, it's a bit gray all the time, but actually it doesn't rain very much. We have good connections. It's very easy to get here. You can fly to anywhere in Europe. It's very easy. We have the biggest investment in Europe is still in London than any other city. It's absolutely the case. But I think sometimes people mix UK and USA as like the little brother of USA. It's like, well, there's UK or USA, and I'm trying to decide. I know US a bit bigger, but it's actually now, that was true 20 years ago. Now it's not true anymore. And so for many people, they say, I don't want a US to consider the US because actually I want to fly to wherever, and I live,
Mhm.
I don't want to spend 12 hours flying. I want 3 or 4 hours. Really cool, valid reason. I would never want to live in the US because of the healthcare. It scares me. The idea that it's like you go to hospital for something and you have like $34,000 bill just because you like cut your arm or something. It's like I can't understand the stress. We have a free healthcare here. It's not very good, but it's there, you know.
Yeah.
So it's a mixed world, and obviously the other side of it is the culture. Some people just love British culture. They love to be here, and they love the feeling they get when in the country. Most people actually who end up staying here, they can't describe specifically it's this or this. They actually just feel that it's their place. We have a few clients like that who started working with us recently. I said, why London? And they said, I don't know. I feel like it's my home. And I do understand that. It's been my home pretty much my whole life, apart from 2 or 3 years when I worked outside of the city. And I also can't imagine living anywhere else. But you have to be aware, these are the limits you work within. And if you're willing to take the limits, if you're willing to say, okay, that's my limit, these are the limits I work within, I'm willing to work with them, it can be a great place, but it's not the garden of roses. Let's say
Yeah, yeah.
there
I
there
mean,
are
you just need to be realistic about a lot of things. It's just like you need to take responsibility for what are you doing and like doing your research, understanding what you want, what you feel. And like a lot of people also like they say they want to move, like to UK or to United States or something, but then somehow, their process of finding a job or, like moving is not working for them. And then at some point I just ask them like, are you really want to do that? Are you I don't know how to say, like, are you passionate about that? Like, what is your motivation? Let's say that. And they're like, well, actually, I kind of scared. Like, I kind of think, do I really need that? And this is the moment when actually people realize why nothing is happening in the work, like a job searching process or like in relocation process or anything, it's just like, because you're kind of closing your energy for that to find a job. Like this is very important. I know maybe it sounds a little bit like not serious, but it is important because like what is happening in your mind and like you're energetically, if you're scared, you fear that it's not something you want. And a lot of people even don't understand that. They like they always say like, oh, I have this, I like, it's like people needs to go to gym and they always say that like they're super busy or like they have a lot of work or
yeah,
something
it's good
like that,
analogy.
go to the gym. The truth is they just don't want to, I don't know, exercise or or like have a pain after the exercise or something like that. So the
Yeah,
same for the job search.
yeah, it's very good point. Just getting started is the hardest part. Once you decide, okay, I'm going to give it a go. And of course, if you move here and you don't like it, you can go back. It's not like
Well,
you're
it's you
stuck here.
tried, like
Yeah,
you have experience. Like I lived in States for 7 years and I kind of didn't like it. Like, I mean, it's fun, interesting. I had a great experience. I met amazing people, but in the same time, it's just not my vibe. Like, it's not my vibe. Like, I prefer Europe more. Like, I love London, like UK. So it's just for everyone, it's something specific for them.
yeah. So on that point, we obviously can't talk forever today, but we're going to do a number of different additional podcasts on this topic. And so I think broadly speaking, this is what we're going to do. We're going to do the next one is going to be about more focused on money. And I think to go a really bit in depth, look at different industries and different salaries today, not last year, not today. Like what are people actually paying for right now? How many of those roles are real? Because I think there's a lot of fake roles on LinkedIn and people see big salary and the reality is it doesn't exist. We'll also look in another episodes a bit more properly at visas. We'll also look at like cities in another episode, like who does what where. For example, my first job was in insurance in Surrey, and Surrey is dominated by insurance as the industry for that area. People can also like look at different areas and kind of find out what they like. You know, like, do you want to live in the countryside? Well, you're probably going to focus on this type of company. There's much more opportunity there. Pharmaceutical, for example, have their own area. And then we'll look in the next one after that, we'll look a bit more like how to actually go from watching this and thinking about it to like, what do you actually do? How do you go today from brainstorming about making a move to actually making a move? And then the last one is we're going to explore culture in this country. And I think that will be probably the most interesting one, even as someone with, I have blood, my blood is partly British. And I understand this country incredibly well. I was born here, but some things still surprise me. Some of the behaviors of people here, I can tell like 5 different stories about my neighbor and his strange behavior and so on, right? And in the work environment, you might be surprised how different it is to any other country in the world, and how careful you have to be about certain things, saying certain things, not saying certain things, phrases, slang, behavior. It is very unique, but it's also very consistent. So once you understand it, I think you can walk into any English or British office, it will be quite similar. You'll get it. It's not like every city is different. No, it's very consistent, but it's very like, it's under this, everything is just under the surface. Everything is kind of just hinting and gently saying and this and that. And it's important that we, like we always laugh about emails. When somebody says to you in an email, like, as per my previous email, it means they're really angry with you. But in any other country, you would not understand this, right? And so like, we'll go into that stuff a bit more detail, just so people can actually take this. And the goal of this is that people can watch this by the end of this series, even if they watch it on 2 or 3x speed, so they run through it as quickly as possible or take their time, they literally will know what to do to move, and hopefully with an understanding that it's really for them, and also that it's like possible as well, right? Because like, yeah, it can be a great option and it's totally possible, and here's how to do it. So if they all align, then you can just go forward and start getting to work. Do you have any other secret things to add, or are we going to save everything for the next podcast?
Yeah, I think we covered today's podcast very well, and I'm super excited for the future podcast we're going to cover. I think it will be very helpful for all our listeners, and just like to feel like you're not alone in this, and like there's people who been through that, going through that, like will go through that. And you depends on which state of your life right now, and on the job search, relocation, just thinking about what you want to do next in your life. So I think it's a very good thing. Like when I would say probably personally, when I was looking and like for a job and like going through all the stages of searching, doing my CV and everything, I wish there was like a channel like that, like so I can listen and be like, oh my God, I'm not alone in that, like talking about what I'm struggling right now at this moment. So I think it's we hope that this will be very helpful for our listeners, and stay with us, follow us on social media. We have a lot of updates, upgrades, and a lot of other stuff. So just keep up with us, and see you on next episode.
Perfect. All right. Looking forward to it.